spent one Shabbos by the Chafetz Chaim. Came back with enough stories he used to always tell over at different occasions. The Chafetz Chaim pointed out, he said, the man, if you ate the man, so if you thought you wanted it to taste like a certain food, you want it to taste like this food, it tasted like that. You want it to taste like flesh, the man tasted like meat. You want it to taste like fish, it tasted like fish. What happens if a person didn't think when he ate the man? If he thought he wanted to be ice cream, it was ice cream. But he wasn't thinking and he ate. So the Chafetz Chaim says, as mitracht nicht, hat es nicht kein Tam. If a person doesn't think, there's no taste. That's Torah. If a person doesn't think, he goes to learn, you gotta learn, so he's sitting and learning. As mitracht nicht, hat es nicht kein Tam. A person has to have a thirst for Yediyas HaTorah. The Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over Pulpula Dairaisa to Moshe Rabbeinu. Only to Moshe. Moshe nohag toivas ayin ba'atzmai. He was generous, he gave it to Klal Yisrael. So Rav Pam asked, what does it mean he was generous and he gave it to Klal? What would have happened if Moshe would have been stingy? So there would have been no Pulpula Dairaisa. So Rav Pam said, it's a yisod in learning. A Rebbe has to have a simcha, a cheshik for Yediyas HaTorah, for Pulpula Dairaisa. If the Rebbe has a cheshik, a simcha to give it over, then you can learn from him. Just as Moshe gave to Klal Yisrael, that's how you have to give. And you see it always in Rav Pam himself, the great cheshik for Yediyas HaTorah. Let me tell you, a year ago, we made a siyum on Sefer Shmuel. Rav Pam was kind enough to come to the siyum. And first I learned the end of Shmuel. I learned for whatever it was, a half an hour, 40 minutes. And then I stepped down, and Rav Pam got up to speak. So as I was stepping down the steps, Rav Pam was coming up to speak. So he whispered something in my ear. So everybody's watching. I don't know what you thought. What's he going to whisper in his ear? It must be something real sweet. Some nice thing about how he enjoyed it, about how nice it is. Maybe he told me how beautifully I spoke. Nothing doing. Why did Rav Pam tell me? He said, you mentioned the Machlokes Tzais and Nesivos. You missed is an Or Sameach and Hilchos Shaila. The first Or Sameach, you have to see it. He was going up to speak himself. And I was coming down. There were people waiting. But the cheshik for the Yediyas HaTorah, that's what's to learn from. That's what we have to take away. There's an Aglay Tal in the Hagdama. The Aglay Tal says it's an Aglay Tal to chazer over and over. Masha shamati ktsas b'nei adam toyim binyan limud HaTorah. There are many people who make a mistake in learning. Va'omru, when they think ki halaymeid u'mechadesh chidushim u'misaneg b'limudai. They think a person who learns and he says chidushim and he enjoys his learning. Ein ze limud HaTorah kol kach l'shma. He enjoys it. He thrives on it. That's not so lishma. K'mayim hayalaymed b'pashtus she'ein lay mehalimut shum tainig. It's not as great as if he would learn without pleasure. Zeu tos mefursim. It's a terrible mistake, a terrible error. Va'adarabba, on the contrary, ki zehu ikar mitzvahs limud HaTorah. The main part of the main mitzvah to learn is liyaisas v'sameach u'misaneg b'limudai, to get a joy out of learning. Va'az divrei Torah nivloin b'damai. And then the Torah, when you get a joy, you get it in learning and knowing. Divrei Torah nivloin b'damai, they're absorbed in the person. U'meyacha shehu nene b'divrei Torah hu nasa dabuk l'Torah. The mitzvah of learning is to learn b'simcha. What is the emtzoi to learn b'simcha? Is to learn not just l'shem the ma'aseh of limud, but to learn, to want to know, to have Yediyas HaTorah. I'll tell you a secret. We live in a generation where the generations are schwacher. A person wants to be a Talmid Chacham. It doesn't take as much as it once took. Really, you have to know a little more than everybody else, and everyone thinks that you're a Talmid Chacham.